is another tidbit I've gotten from a board member that I've worked with and said, Mike, great, great technical knowledge, leadership of your team, right? He was being complimentary, but then but your marketing skills, I'll sugarcoat a little bit, your marketing skills stink.
My day starts with a coffee and a deviation. By 9 a.m., someone's asking me, can this batch ship? Is this critical? Mike, when you read that, what do you recognize? And what do you wince about?
People don't understand, Nagesh, the language you and I talk when we talk quality and compliance. They just don't. It's not, the jargon needs to go away. So the point is good communication of what does this mean in a very clear, concise, crisp way. That's how you gain trust, right? That's how you gain the collaboration side of it.
Good afternoon. I hope everybody is doing well. This is Nagesh Nama dialing in from Mumbai, and I have Mike dialing in from beautiful New Jersey on a Thursday afternoon. Mike, I'm glad to have you. I'm just going to rattle off a few housekeeping rules, then we can get rolling, Mike. First of all, it's a privilege to have Mike on this live podcast. It's amazing what experience Mike has, what he brings to the table, and you'll see that in the conversation that we're going to have today. Before we kick it off, this show is sponsored by XLM Continuous TV, and you can. We're going to talk about various topics today, mostly related to quality. This will be for about 45 minutes approximately. Then Mike will take questions. You can always post your questions in the comment sections. My team is monitoring it, and they will communicate with me. So that's about it. Just quick note about Mike. Mike is a distinguished quality, compliance, and board advisor with more than 30 years of leadership across pharma, biotech, med device, compounding, and 503B outsourcing organizations. There are not that many people that have worked in all these different areas. Mike is also the owner and principal consultant of Conformit Solutions LLC, where he partners with various organizations, executive teams, and boards to strengthen cGMP compliance, elevate quality and regulatory strategy, and transform compliance into a strategic business enabler. Mike, if you can continue on that and kind of summarize your great experience, then we can kick it off, Mike.
Thanks, Nagesh. And as usual, you're being too kind. For the audience, I've known Nagesh, since 1995, 96, when we first worked together, always on a consultant, client relationship. So no matter where I've been in career, I've tapped Nagesh on his shoulder more than a few times. So I appreciate you reaching out today, Nagesh, and offering to do this. So hello, everyone. I can't see who you are or know who you are. I just know there's more than a few out there. But Mike McGee, pharmacist by education, 40 years experience in industry when I decided to dismount and consult, as Nagesh mentioned. I've always been in pharma, so to speak, with other backgrounds that Nagesh had stated. I would say half of my career, maybe a little more than half, was with Johnson & Johnson in various roles in development, manufacturing, small, large molecule, facility management. And then probably around 2002, 2003, I switched over to QA. Everyone thought, what's he doing? I thought, what am I doing? Because I thought I was a manufacturing guy. But since then, I've never looked back. And when I dismounted from J&J, I went to a small startup public company of 50 people. So I went from Fortune 50 to a public company of 50, which was a natural fit for my brain, but also unintentionally a good move. And I've navigated from there, as Nagesh had mentioned. It's great to be here. I'll offer my perspective on the topics and questions that Nagesh will bring up, and we'll have a conversation. Just let me caveat this by saying it's not a one-size-fits-all, because the way a company like a J&J would approach something is not like what a company of 50, public, private, etc. would do. But nonetheless, quality is quality. It's just a matter of how it's done. So thanks, Nagesh.
Mike, thank you again for joining me on this live LinkedIn Live. Mike, before we dive in, life update. Your daughter's moving to Atlanta. We were just discussing it before we went live here, and getting married in October, I am assuming. How's the dad of the bride stress level scoring against an FDA pre-approval inspection?
Oh my God, it's no competition. I sit in front of the agency, not to lessen it, but she's our only child. My wife is, you can't imagine, right? And moving to Atlanta, so it's not like it's
correct
down the street. And actually, yesterday was the last trailer move, so she's gone. One would say we'll probably likely follow her in some time, but short answer, Nagesh, I would easily help a team sit in front of the agency as opposed to all the emotion, right? with on the family
Especially the
side.
child, right? The only
Oh
child.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yep. Next question. Little bit on the personal side. You're contemplating a move to Georgia next spring, I'm guessing. After 30 or 40 years in regulated manufacturing, what does Mike McGee actually want the next chapter to be like? More advisory, more operations, more board work, or less of it all?
When I dismounted from the full-time corporate work and got into consulting back in September, October of just this last year, one, it was to stay busy, not the retirement mode. How much golf, fish, whatever can you do? But as I've been engaged now since October in compounding, in outsourcing, in pharma, doing this right here with you today, it's actually energizing me to probably never quit, so to speak, and just stay home. One, you got to stay mentally challenged and engaged, right? We all do in some way, but it's still a lot of fun. So I can't see an end date yet.
Wow. Continuing again, you worked across pharma, biotech, devices, 503B, like I mentioned in the introduction. If you had to pick one sector where the gap between boardroom perception and shop floor reality is widest, which one and why?
Wow, again, back to my comment on scale, right? Large public company versus small, right? It's just a board is so much different between them. A board's a board, but enterprise risk, business drivers, what's material, right? When you're private, it doesn't really matter, right? Because you're private. But I would say the small to medium size, and those can check out my career pedigree on LinkedIn, but from small to medium size with a board that the company's trying to grow and continue to grow is the most challenging. And I'd even layer on top of that when there's private there, whether it's venture capital or private equity owned or backed, it's a whole nother dynamic for a whole number of reasons, right?
You're
And how
seeing
the
them.
business model is set up. So that's the challenge in a way of trying to effectively, from the quality side, communicate the requirement, but what's really necessary to show kind of where the company is, just from a quality culture maturity perspective of this is where we are, but this is where we need to go to support the business and where the business wants to take it. And very easily try to communicate risk. What does it all mean? The so what question. Those that have worked with me that might be on this call, I've said more than once, you ask the so what question, like, so what does this mean? So if you're looking at a presentation, so what am I looking at? Like, what's the message? And early on, when I dismounted from J&J and went to the small startup, Discovery Labs, I sat on the executive team and met with the board. You learn real quick, what good conversation and communication looks like. And I was horrible at it. I'd like to think I'm a little bit better today. But people don't understand, Nagesh, the language you and I talk when we talk quality and compliance. They just don't. It's not, the jargon needs to go away. So the point is good communication of what does this mean in a very clear, concise, crisp way. That's how you gain trust, right? That's how you gain the collaboration side of it. So I'd say that's probably the toughest is people that just don't, it's not their day job of quality and compliance, but to communicate the why, the so what question.
Mike, I'm going to circle back to that. I want to hold that thought, but I want to discuss a couple of things that caught your attention and definitely caught my attention when we had that chat about it. I want to read you something in European QA leaders post on LinkedIn. My day starts with a coffee and a deviation. By 9 a.m., someone's asking me, can this batch ship? Is this critical? Mike, when you read that, what do you recognize and what do you wince about?
Wow. The first thing that comes to mind is coffee starts the day with a deviation. Can this batch ship? The weight of the world is on this person's shoulders as the owner, and probably doesn't own it. But the source of that issue likely didn't come from this person, but now he or she, I'm assuming a quality person here, needs to make this decision. And it sounds like he or she is in this, I'm alone. It's not a team, it's not company decision, company speak. It's more of, I need to make this decision and not really being the true owner. And then if it's a deviation, it doesn't seem to be a slam dunk, right? It's got some issues with it. So I just look at this as lack of maturity. It's more reactive and not something definitely not sustainable, right? And then that now begs a whole bunch of more questions, right? But that's what immediately comes to mind.
And I'm going to continue on that same thread. That post ends with a powerful filter. Would I explain this decision to an inspector, to a patient, to myself? That's the final statement. In your experience, which one of those three does quality fail most often and why?
Need to make a few assumptions here, right? Based on what you're saying to me, right? But again, quality's not found a way back to my comments before, of looking at this from a maturity level, getting more proactive, like continuous improvement. The culture, there is a culture established here. It's reactive. It seems like it's in silos, as opposed to 1% better every day. How do we get to that better place? This sounds like it's the norm, firefighting more than not, which then doesn't lend itself to fixing the problem, like putting time against the issue, right? Now, this deviation could be a moment in time, single event, or thematically, is it something more like common? Like, yeah, we don't know, but I wouldn't want to be this person. But I'll go on the limb here and say, those on quality on this call, this could be part of your life every day.
Correct.
Right? Love to hear about people that truly are in a adaptive mode, continuous improvement, good collaboration. Yeah, but I think this is somewhat of the norm at many places.
No, I thought when you and I discussed, this was interesting. And I just want to move to the board level now. And want to ask, that's kind of the theme of this live, this LinkedIn Live as well. Normally, boards are fluent in financial risk, cyber risk, increasingly ESG risk. Why is quality risk still one they nod through during management review? That's my assumption here, based on what I know through my experience. Just can you throw some light on that?
In my experience of working with boards and presenting to boards, you learn quickly over time. If a PowerPoint, 5 slides, right to the message, this is what we're trying to say. But up front, quality has to have the right seat at the table, be embraced, be trusted, show you add value, show that you are paying attention to the business so you can speak to financials.
Correct.
Even if it's just to show, cash in, cash out, top line revenue, where the expenses go, profitability, what we're trying to target. I've taken a couple of finance courses, but I've learned some through career. Doesn't make me an expert. But if you're able to have the conversation and ask some good questions, that helps with you being embraced as part of the team, not just, let's talk about this deviation, we have a problem.
Correct.
That they don't understand. Again, it's not their language. They don't understand. Now, smart people, they can pick up on what's being discussed, but in terms they understand to their business, right? So that's what I've learned, 5 slides. I've been in organizations where a management review, which is not really to the board, but 80 slides. And you really never get the message of what are we trying to present here? Just a bunch of numbers? Or is there a hidden message or a real message? And then what are we doing? Like, where is it going to take? How are we being hurt potentially? But where is this taking us? So that's the magic around any board or executive team, right? That may not have a board or a mix. It's the message, crisp. What does it mean? And then offer some solution.
Correct.
Not just
That's the key.
Not
That's
just
the key.
this is a compliance concern, although it may be. What potentially can we do? Now, there may not be anything. The solution is this batch is done, or we have to stop production because, but clearly articulate why.
I think it boils down to, from what I'm hearing here, is that when I'm on the board, or if I'm communicating to the board, with the board, then the style of communication and my own oral maturity about the business does matter a lot, right?
It does matter. And then quality people, this is another tidbit I've gotten from a board member that I've worked with and said, Mike, great technical knowledge, leadership of your team, right? He was being complimentary, but then but your marketing skills, I'll sugarcoat a little bit, your marketing skills stink. You need to be able to articulate the value, the so what question, right? So that stuck in my head a number of years ago of the marketing side of quality of, how do you show off? How do you show it works? How do you show it can benefit the organization, right?
But that's not always there, right, in these conversations?
No. Sometimes you, as a presenter in quality or whatever, just say, Mike, well, if you even get on the agenda and make it to present.
Correct.
Thick skin if you don't. But if you get that, hey, Mike, we're running out of time, you got 5 minutes.
Yeah.
That's where the 5 slide rule comes in. And then in your back pocket, have the dashboard that says, I want to talk to you about these 2 red items of why, what we're doing, and where we need your help. You need the plan A, the plan B, the plan C, and then the tough skin at the end to go, I'm going to have to wait till next quarter.
That's good insight, Mike. What's the question board should be asking their chief quality officer that they almost never ask? I'm talking about from the board side.
Almost never, but it's come up. I had a conversation with CEO and head of HR at one moment. We were going through a tough investigation. And they were in their office talking, in the CEO's office. And I had a meeting, but I saw them and I said, I'll come back. No, Mike, come on in. We were talking about quality. We're talking about what's going on. They were saying, how do you do your job? Because the matter we were dealing with was complicated and it could have been a market action and we could have had some things going on. And I said, frankly, the content's easy. With me and my team and keeping everyone involved, like we will get to the right solution. The hard part is managing you guys with the emotion. Like, oh my God, like what we can't do this. Like, well, yeah, we can, but there's a way to frame a potential market action with what's coming next. Is there something right behind it, or is there something more long lasting here? It's the emotional side of it. So with the EQ of executive and board members, again, brilliant people, but sometimes that self-awareness, they hear one thing and they take it and run. That's where quality's communication,
Right.
Building that collaboration and trust really matters, because then when you go in with that, Houston, we have a problem, they'll listen. They won't like it maybe, but they will at least listen because they know what's coming next, like how it'll be expressed, and not just, Chicken Little, the sky's falling and then quality runs away, right? No. You need to establish that peer-to-peer interaction. So when I said that to them, it's the emotional side of it. Of course, the head was down. I got okay, you can leave now. It was like they were fooling around, like you can go. But it's true. It's that emotional side of it, the people side of it, that needs to be learned by the quality team.
Like I'm the CEO of my company, right? But it happens to me almost on a daily basis, right? I need to face this since buck stops with me, and I need to address it, right? And how I communicate and the emotions, it's not different than what you're saying.
Another example for me goes back a number of years, but number one person in quality for your organization, out of spec result on stability for a product, confirmed out of spec result, field alert, right? Needs to go in. Small company, right?
Yep.
Let my boss know. And he's like, but we're going to the markets tomorrow to raise money. And it could be material. I'm like, okay, I understand, but one has nothing to do with the other in the eyes of the rules around when and how to file the field alert, right? Got that it's painful, but that conversation with him of the why and what does it mean, and if we didn't file, come back to us and hurt us potentially even more than not, going to the markets, right? And you could explain the field alert. And I said it could come back in the next day or so that we found the issue and it becomes a non-issue. You know what I mean? Or a lesser of an issue. Back to that relationship side, but in the mind was we keep things discreetly, but we're raising money, but we can't do other parts of the business. Well, yeah, we got to figure out how we do that. And that was a tough conversation. But it took an hour to get to the right spot.
That's how you answered my question. Mike, you have said quality as a deficiency in influencing the executive and board level. Is that because quality leaders can't translate out of regulatory jargon, or because executives don't want to hear it? I think we already discussed some of it, but this is important. If you can kind of re-emphasize that, the communication bit, then I can move on.
Yeah, you broke up a little bit, but quality is not a customer-facing organization. We will never directly get credit for growing the business, right? We're not customer-facing.
Correct.
But if the right risk benefit profile is there for things we do, and it's not on the reactive side, it could even be on the proactive side. How to design, and I guess you've done this in your career too, use risk management invalidation exercises, right? You can't do everything. You could do things in a smart way that does help the organization to show where we can add value. And, quality is said, right? Let's take this risk-based approach. It's defendable. You've saved time, you've saved money. We can defend it. Nothing's ever 100% absolute. But then again, not to repeat, once people see that you can embrace something that drives positive momentum, it definitely works.
There are many risks, right, in a business: supplier risk, contract lab risk, internal risk. I can go on. In my experience, boards tend to lump them together. How should they actually be triaged at the governance level? Because each risk is different, right?
Each risk is different, but I would say collectively, if you look at the maturity of all systems and processes, right? Whether you're a large company or small company, and you're making product for market, not to exclude clinical yet, but just commercial product, all those elements are there. Whether it's organic or it's third party, it's there. Procedurally, yep, companies have a lot of procedures, right? Yeah, well, we're good. Well, if you peel that back and then look at the operational side of it, is it really as rigorous and as robust as one would think. Yes, we have a supplier qualification SOP. Yes, but have you ever visited your suppliers? Do you ever have conversations around where they depart from normal? And in my auditing time now, plus when in my corporate days, been to more than a few suppliers, CDMOs and such around the world, that example falls out of bed pretty quick because they'll say, no one from your organization has been to see us. But yet, how do they know as a supplier what's important? So you package this as procedurally and then operationally, and then operations come together for your whole supply chain. It all connects. How do you ensure yourself that in-house, outside testing, suppliers, key service providers, all are doing their discrete things where collectively then it says we have comfort in what we do or not. And we're able to identify when things don't go so well. We can put our finger on it. So I'd say it's the operational side that the boards need to know. We are seeing our key partners and suppliers. We are monitoring the right metrics. We do get insight on when things go a little bit askew. But here's what we're doing about it, right?
Yep. And I think, like you said, SOPs are there, everything is there, but it's really keeping the hand on the pulse on the humanness of anything, right? Whether it's a supplier, internal, that's what really matters. Nothing else works really. Yeah, you can have all these processes, SOP. Yes, we need to have them. We need to communicate that properly, but ultimately, it's much more than that, right?
Absolutely. Because
Mike?
FDA and other health authorities know. They know not every company can do everything organically, right? It's too expensive. So contract some stuff. And they know that contractors and suppliers won't always give you what you want, like enter a quality agreement.
Correct.
We had an excursion. Can you send me samples? Like either you don't buy enough from them or you make it difficult for them where they're not going to give you exactly what you want. The agency knows this. Therefore, it's up to you as the company to say, well, if it's that critical, if the supplier won't test, then we test, even if it's once a year, right? But make that prospective, make it shows that we understand what we're getting and our processes around it, and we're able to detect when things go a little different. We've seen at FDA cite many people for just lack of supplier oversight.
Yep. Mike, I just want to move on to 503B. For listeners who don't live in 503B world, what makes outsourcing facility oversight materially different from traditional cGMP? And why is FDA scrutiny intensifying there right now?
We could spend a couple of days on this one in a good way. So for those who are not familiar on the call, 503B and 503A are parts of the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act that after the New England compounding pharmacy issue happened, 2013, I believe it was, where a number of people died of fungal meningitis just due to contamination of sterile product. These sections of the FD&C Act were created for 503A, which is compounding by prescription patient basis, and 503B is outsourcing in bulk. 503Bs operate under the GMPs, like any pharma company. 503As under USP chapters 795, 797. They're a true compounding pharmacy, even though they may look like a brick and mortar pharmacy, it's a pharmacy. Now, with 503Bs, I worked at SCA. Good experience, no misunderstanding, right? Great experience. I've been doing most of my consulting since October in the 503A and B space, mostly Bs. And this is not to be critical or point fingers at anyone, but compounding pharmacies and pharmacists, that's what they know. They either worked in a hospital setting, long-term care and such. They're more familiar with USP chapters. When you get into Bs, the knowledge and experience on the GMPs, in my observation, been at multiple Bs, is just they didn't grow up where people on this call may have grown up in the GMP world, in pharma, biopharma. So there's a knowledge gap to some extent. And then these companies are relatively small. There are some larger ones, but they're small. I was doing an audit last week where the company was 5 people. It was a B, but it was five people. And you think if they have to follow 210, 211, the FDA guidance is on 503Bs, everything that you pharma folks have to use and do, this company of 5 has to do the same thing. Now, they don't have deep pockets, no electronic systems, but the point is, how do you comply when there's a knowledge gap, there's a potential resource, right? How do we go do this? There is such a need to make the 503A and B space viable and keep it viable because they're supplying the market where pharma does not. They're special niche type of products in a way, not commercial off the shelf, and it's necessary. And there's a need, right? There is a need. We see around drug shortage all the time of certain meds. Correct. So I enjoy doing it because People are just, the pharmacists and their techs are so wanting for information and good partnership and tell me what I got to do. And then they go do. So I like that collaboration side of it and such that niche need for the patient community. For sure, it's necessary.
We operators often run lean, correct? And we all know. And how does a board demand inspection readiness without crushing the economics of the business? You have recently been through this. That's the reason I'm asking this question.
Yeah. The boards tend to be present for these larger companies, especially the ones that might be public, right?
Yep.
Most of what I've seen so far is private and very small. So there's not necessarily a board. It's just a small management team. But nonetheless, it's the executive team. They're just looking for direction in a smart way. How can I satisfy the requirement? Right. So we think of, and we do, it's all paper-based for the most part. There are electronic systems present, but it's paper-based. Think about your procedures, execute what you say you do. And more often than not, there's a lot of reliability on third-party suppliers, contract labs and such. Get very close with your key suppliers and contract providers. Get real close with them, visit them, and say, this is what we make. This is how we say we make it. The assurance that it's good, and stand behind it. And then as you grow and scale, have these systems and processes scale with you at the right time. But Nagesh, tends to get the ear of them and they listen. And in my experience so far, auditing a good number at this point, they listen, they want to do the right thing. They're not as quick because the resources could be smaller, but they are marching to the right spot in most cases, right? Now, folks on the call probably follow the news, and FDA, it is citing them. But what I've noticed is, my opinion now, love to hear from others, it's for basic blocking and tackling, lack of supplier oversight, lack of sterility assurance, not investigating ISO 5, environmental excursions. So when I read this, I go, how can people not know this? I mean, this is nothing new, right? These things have been around forever. It's how to go about it to show that you're taking this holistic view on, here's how we understand what's going on and try to take the right corrective action.
Mike, in your opinion, is the FDA's pace of guidance keeping up with industry's pace of digital adoption? The reason is I'm deeply in the AI world now, so I had to ask you this question. Or are we headed for a regulatory whiplash moment? Because technology is coming in, and we all know that, right? And we see even the FDA adopting pretty aggressive, internally adopting some good frameworks and projects, and Project ELSA is one of them. So what are your thoughts on that?
I honestly welcome all of it. I was fortunate enough when I was at Ferring to go to Silver Spring for cyber/counterfeit diversion industry FDA get together, because the agency said, we just don't have and Gottlieb was the commissioner at the time. We just don't, he spoke, we just don't have the resources. And they went over all of what's going on just on that end of it. Now, if you look at inspections, submission reviews, all that, I believe the FDA should be funded, not cut back. ELSA, you knew the agency would be right out there with AI in a smart way. And you mentioned ELSA, of really getting from a risk point of view, who should be inspected and why. And I also like the one-day inspection that they've come up with, not to replace full inspections, but as a surveillance that ELSA will probably tell them what to do or where to go, not what to do. And I like it. And I like the oversight. I like the statements with evidence, of course, that are made. Because they're influenced and will help companies drive correction. We all know leadership has said at companies, well, we weren't cited by the FDA. We didn't get a 483. Therefore, good to be a consultant now. Well, those comments don't make any sense to me because the agency's only looking at 15-20% of your total data. It's a snapshot in time. And just because they didn't pull the one deviation that you were scared about, right? That's why I come back to collaboration with quality and compliance folks. Continuous improvement. Things take time, but if you prospectively say we're on this journey to get to some place, you can always show the agency in the right time and way. Here's our plan. When they find, like I said, ISO 5 excursions that were never investigated, as a consumer, potential patient, sterility issues from that organization, I'm a little bit worried. So I'm all for whatever they do.
Yep. If a CEO is listening today, only does 3 things in the next 90 days to improve inspection readiness and quality governance, right? I'm talking about a CEO who's listening to this show. What are they? What should they be thinking about?
Back to company size, public-private matter, right? A big pharma is going to have a different conversation, right, than a small company, right, from a number of reasons. But I would say, if you're not, have frequent, to be determined what frequent means, conversations with your quality and compliance leadership team. Ask them what keeps them up at night. Where are their concerns? Remember, size matters, right? This it's a different behavior, but where should we be paying attention? But that almost as if the horse is already out of the barn. The management review should be taking place, should be taking place in a certain way with the right information. So ask it, are we hearing everything that we need to hear in the right way to make the right determination or input or help with the quality compliance risk profile for this company? Now, that's a little bit different than enterprise risk management, right? Some quality and compliance risks go under the ERM. However, from the quality and compliance lens, where are we most vulnerable? What's keeping us up? Do that risk assessment if it's not done already. We will accept some risk, but then things that need that attention, like those oh my God moments, which you think should not happen, but they do. And then I would say put a plan together to address. One, because it sets the culture, right? Every company has a culture, but it sets that culture of forward thinking with collaboration.
Yep. What's the one belief you held strongly 10 years ago about quality that you have completely changed your mind on today? Just going back in your 40 years of experience, obviously you have changed roles, right? I mean, the way you're looking at quality, the way you're looking maybe 10 years ago versus the way you're looking at it today.
I'd say I always was, but I'm a better disciple around emotional intelligence and understanding it. So then I can understand how people's emotions work, because people's stress behavior is their real behavior, right? When things don't go so well, you'll see the real person come out. And then learning to adapt to that of how do I even get closer to that person if their stress behavior is scream, dismiss, just tune out. Their brain just tunes out. They just don't want to deal. Avoidance, right? But not that it's bad or wrong. It's just that's their brain. Get closer to them, the whole trust piece. Here's how quality adds value. Said to a colleague many years ago, who I'm very friendly with. You get nervous when I get nervous. Don't knock on, he used to knock on my door every 10 minutes. Mike, up. Like, it's okay. When I come to you or I text you, then I need you to pay attention. When I say, we got to talk, that's when you listen. So understood his brain, right? That's what I say. Years ago, I was okay at it at best. Now I'm probably okay at it. But it's something that I watch and I constantly remind myself how to go about it.
Right. Mike, you've definitely have faced the FDA inspectors many times, right, in your life over the years. Can you just pick one instance, just from your viewpoint, something that the viewers here it'll help them, because they will be probably doing that down the line, maybe?
Inspections have changed in that years ago, right? Before smartphones and such. The FDA investigator came in, went through his or her, or multiples, right? Questions back and forth. Maybe went back to the district office if they were local or not. Today, CDER or CBER are more involved in the inspections in real time that I've noticed, where the investigators are in constant communication with home office. So that dynamic has shifted a little bit. It is what it is. I would then say, for me, building that relationship with the investigator. When I was at the table, I was at the head table for manufacturing or quality when I had that role, you get to build that relationship with the investigator really fast. Where hopefully in some point in time, there comes this level of trust, right? Trust but verify, I got it. But it's never spoken, but you get the sense and you feel, okay, the agency seems to be in a good place with us, right? It's a body language. So we just give them what they want, what they need, answer their questions, right? We're in an okay place. Today, digital, real-time exchange of data, right, is so fast. Where years ago, there wasn't that exchange of data in real time. Getting that relationship could be a little bit tougher, right? Not that it's not possible, but it's a little bit tougher because of the dynamic of the inspection. So I would just say to anyone hosting, supporting, get that relationship with the investigators at that front table if you're there on the tour. Show that you own it. Show that open and honest, of course. Cross-functionally, show the culture. It may have always been there years ago, but whoever heard of quality culture years ago, right? There's not a regulation that talks about quality culture, but it talks about responsibilities. They are looking for an organization that's cohesive, collaborative, forward-thinking, continuous improvement. The agency sniffs that out real quick, and my opinion would then tend to give the organization some freedoms, knowing that they have all the right mindset and things in place to go forward. Right? Again, no evidence on that. That's just my guess of how things are evolving with the digital age.
Mike, we are almost out of time, and I just wanted to recap something that you have said in two or three sentences. So, from what I understand, it is being in tune with the culture, making sure that we always communicate, whether it's a board or people who work for you, and your emotional intelligence is very important, no matter with whom you're communicating, whether it's inspectors, could be the board, could be the executive team, or could be the employees who work for you. I just want to quickly summarize that. Am I on the right mark?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yep. Mike, thank you. And let's take some questions now and see what's coming up our way. There's one question, Mike. What's the earliest warning sign that a company's quality systems are no longer fit for scale? The earliest warning sign that a company's quality systems are no longer fit for scale.
Well, it could come at it a few ways, but first pass success on batch release. Every batch seems to have a deviation of sorts, but it depends on what type. If you're rejecting materials, if you're not closing deviation kappa change controls on time, kappas are ineffective. Just basic metrics, local metrics on performance. If it's, again, not everything's perfect, but if you're looking at this stuff going, why is this happening? It's just an indicator of go back way upstream. How you qualify and validate test methods, how you qualify materials and suppliers, your manufacturing process, right? CQAs, CMAs, CPPs, right? It's like, does it all make sense or not? Because on the back end now, you're getting lagging indicators that say you have one or more things going on.
Yep. My next question: how should regulated companies think differently about validation in an AI driven operating model, assuming that they're thinking seriously about AI? So, how should they think differently? I mean, the quality organization.
Public service announcement for Nagesh and his offerings, right? For this person on the phone. But the old days of paper-based validation master plan, functional requirements, user requirements, vendor audit, paper, one-time event is gone, right? It's just gone. So the sophistication of equipment that has any sort of software with it is you could do all that work way up front as opposed to waiting on the back end and not a discrete one-time event, right? You can constantly, continuously show that system is always functioning as intended. Now, AI can help with that.
Correct. It can.
And I'm soon going to get over my skis on my knowledge with this one, Nagesh. But if this person wants the ultimate response, definitely call Nagesh.
Mike, there's next question. I would like to, if you don't mind, I was writing an article for a big media. So nowadays I do write articles, and this is something that will be published soon, I'm assuming. And this on the same topic. If you don't mind, I just want to read a couple of excerpts. Is that okay? Since
Sure.
AI is such a hot topic, right? Quality AI is such a hot topic. And I'm going to answer the next question as part of my reading here. The next question is what does continuous intelligence actually look like in practice for a quality organization? I would like to, because it's very much in sync with what I'm going to be writing in this article. If you don't mind, 2 minutes. I'm not going to read the whole article, obviously. I just want to read some quick snippets here. And I want to get your thoughts also. Quick background on this, my article. Something remarkable happened at a government press conference on April 28, 2026. The FDA, an agency more commonly associated with slow-moving bureaucracy, announced that it had conducted the first real-time clinical trial. Real-time. You remember you mentioned about the communication, how fast digital things are moving nowadays? This is an actual functioning program with two of the world's largest pharmaceutical companies already streaming live clinical data directly into FDA review systems through a cloud platform powered by AI. Let that land for a moment. The federal regulator has outrun the industry it oversees, in my opinion. Now, the pharma company that survives the next decade, again, in my opinion, I'm just summarizing what I'll be writing in this article, will not be the one with the largest AI budget. It will be the one built around a single premise. Agents do the work. I'm talking about AI agents. Humans govern the agents. That inverts almost everything about how pharma is run today. In a frontier company, quality assurance stops being a paperwork factory and becomes a governance function. QA does not author documents and write validation protocols or chase deviations across email threads. QA defines the guardrails, risk thresholds, and regulatory alignment, then supervises autonomous systems executing against them. If your CQO is still measuring by documents reviewed by is measured by documents reviewed per quarter, you're running a 1990s operating model with 2026 software bolted on. I mean, I go on like this, but the idea is agents can do most of the work a human is doing in the quality organization, crunching data, looking at things, even simple things like GDP errors. Because a lot of the quality personnel are spending time doing that. They don't go to the line. They'll be looking at documents and looking for GDP errors and things of that nature. That can be done by AI faster on a 24 by 7 basis, much better than humans if it's designed properly. It can be done. I'm very confident, and we have done that within XLM. So now the new world quality organization within pharma can be quality personnel governing a bunch of digital agents that do the work, but you still sign off on it. Means you need to be intelligent enough to define the risk thresholds, make sure that the agents are working right, and looking at the final data they're presenting to you and making the right call. So this will can happen in real time. It's not even near real time. It can happen in real time. So we'll soon will see that pharma manufacturing adopting such things. Again, these are my thoughts, being so close to AI technology in the consumer side, in manufacturing, on the B2B side, and in pharma. These are my just thoughts. I just would like your opinion on it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I like what I heard in the article. Even with this clinical work, how they power the study, right, to meet statistically significant endpoints, right? Yeah, that acceptance criteria had nothing to do with AI, right? But AI could probably give surveillance on it a lot quicker,
That's correct.
Midway into the trial. The AI, it seems like it's going to go that way of, are we going to
It can
meet
really
success?
crunch data, Mike. It can really
Sorry?
crunch data, huge amounts of data.
Yeah,
Pretty
yeah.
quickly.
And the quality team is going to be needed to set acceptance criteria. Look at how in clinical, just to reference your clinical here, how clinical departures from the clinical protocol are handled, because that happens in the CAPA world for clinical, how things are managed. And that's not AI, that's the human side of data crunching is one thing and speed. But the acceptance criterion, when you get a deviation, I think the quality human side there is still needed to help guide where it goes, as I understand the power of AI. And it's probably going to change 10 more times, right, in the next 10 days. But quality's got to be able to set that acceptance criteria and have a review of the data. We all know some agents in AI just lie. They'll put stuff out there that's just not true. So we need that human side of it until
I agree. But
the future hits.
yes, the technology is changing there also to keep AI honest. So, for example, you can build some guardrails on what it's giving. You can build some real-time evals, meaning you can measure its performance in real time, making sure that, like calibration, right? How we do calibration in labs. We can calibrate the AI agents. There are technologies for that. And also we can have multiple agents, meaning just don't take whatever the first agent is doing. You can have a QA agent, meaning LLM only from a different agent, cross-checking the work of the first agent. So believe me, it's really advancing, but ultimately it's still the human. We cannot get rid of the human in the loop. There's no way, not in our industry. Mike?
Yes, sir.
Closing remarks, Mike. We are pretty much on top of the hour here. Closing remarks, please.
Again, thank you for reaching out to me for the invite. I enjoyed the topic. Hopefully folks on the call got some information and or value out of it. Yeah, I really enjoyed the time. Just curious who was participating, right? If I'll ever know, but just how many colleagues are there. If anyone wants to reach out to me independently, further questions, comments, potential consulting work, not that this is a sales pitch, but I'll take 5 seconds to say so. And thanks again, Nagesh.
Mike, thank you. Anybody in the audience, Mike is on LinkedIn and his profile is listed on this event page as well. So use LinkedIn to link with him. Mike, it was my pleasure talking to you today. I really appreciate it. Happy Thursday.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.